What's up, guys? It's yours truly, the Money Nista, 20 years in audit, accounting, and tax, business owner, real estate investor, tax strategist, and wealth builder through the United States tax code. So I have here with me my right hand, Vinny Valentino, owner of Advised Realty Services, which is brokerage and property manager. And yes, guys, he is my broker in Connecticut. He's based out of Southington, and he's also my property manager, my one-stop shop. He has the Rolodex of all the professionals, so I don't have to toil on my end with anything. So we're going to be talking about properties, investment properties, and financing and the new Fannie Mae guidelines and all that good stuff that you guys want to know for investing. Particularly, Vinny is based out of Connecticut. So I have a lot of for those of you who don't know, I have a lot of my properties in Connecticut, which despite popular belief, I think is pretty good to landlords. So let's get started. I met Vinny looking for my investment property. I went to the Northeast because I'm from the Northeast, and I knew Connecticut had so many multifamilies, unlike the South.
Mm.
So I found real Vinny through just chance, and he was the man. So I put my hooks in him, and that was that.
That's it.
So he's my eyes and ears. For those of you who are always asking me, how do you find properties? How do you know? I always tell you, find an agent, a realtor who knows what they're doing. Because if you don't, you need a professional on hand. Everybody's not going to be everything to you. So your agent should be well versed. So I'm going to start with Vinny. What are some things that we look for when we're looking for an investment property, just outside of cash flow, like functionally and structurally and things of that nature? And how do you do your analysis?
So, thank you so much for that intro. No,
Mhm.
I love it. I personally, I always look at it as like, when you're looking at an investment, you obviously want to look at numbers first, like you were saying, like you want to make sure that the investment is bringing a good ROI for you, but you also want to look at the things that are going to cause you the less headaches as possible. So when you go into a unit, you want to look first and foremost mechanicals, roof, windows, right? I mean, the windows are keeping you warm, the roof is keeping you dry, and the mechanicals are pretty much like the heartbeat of the property, right?
Right, the
You
meat.
walk in-
Yeah.
Yeah, we always look at like water heaters. If it's all electric and there's just a water heater, you want to make sure those water heaters are, up to date, serviced. If not, like less than 10 years old, because if those go, then it's a problem. So you want to find. I always think like cosmetics is always easy to repair. Obviously, like you've gone through some of the units that you had and you've
Right.
totally modeled them and made them beautiful, but making sure like the heartbeat of the property, like
Right.
mechanical, the first thing that we kind of look at. Because if you're changing furnaces, roofs, windows, etc., it's going to take a long time for you to see any kind of return on your investment.
Oh, of course. And are there any like disclosures that you guys get? Like, I noticed, and this was something that it wasn't even second nature to me, but there's disclosures that they have to give, right? If there's like any
Yeah.
flooding or how old the roof is or things of that nature.
Yeah, you have your property disclosure. So property disclosures is going to pretty much tell you like, does anybody else have access to the property? Meaning like, is there a right of way or is there, can that type of stuff.
What's a right of way?
Right away, like, does somebody have to travel through your driveway to get to another part of the property behind you?
Oh,
Yeah, sometimes. So, we looked at a property today and there was like, we were looking at the building on the corner and the gentleman, the neighbor of the building that we were looking at had a right of way that went through his driveway. So they pretty much have access to go through your property to gain to another property. Now that becomes kind of a situation if you have a property that has a right of way, like now you have to make sure that it's cleared for your neighbor to get through. So that's a
oh,
whole
I would have
that's
never
a whole
even
other
thought of
section
that.
itself. Yeah.
So what are some things I guess that people don't think about when viewing a property, whether they're experienced or not? I know that you were my eyes and my ears, and you would like point out mold, and I was like, "That's mold."
Yeah. So
So
yeah.
things like that, I was like,
Yeah, like what is that? So I mean, mold is tricky, right? I mean, a lot of people like whether they're using a shower and it gets wet or they're showering and 25 minutes. I have three girls that shower and they're touching
"Mm."
an hour or 30 minutes, you know what I mean? You're using the shower and the you don't have the fan on, so it's accumulating some mold and stuff. When you gotta look at that because obviously that could be that could be a big issue if you need to address.
Yeah. I mean, I remember we went through a property and we were on the first floor in one of the bedrooms and we saw mold by the window, like towards the bottom. And I
Yeah.
was like, I would have never even seen that or thought of that. Like that would have been,
Yeah, that could be water that, that in that situation, it could be like water that's leaking into the window,
mhm.
finding its way inside the walls and just sits over time and then creates mold.
Yeah.
So those are all things to look at because then now you have tenants in the building. You have, if they have kids in the building, now you're worried about that stuff. So I think those are all major things that you have to look at when you're looking at a property.
Okay. So I guess some other stuff outside of the structure, you look at the market rate rents, you do some research on the rents that would cover just to make sure that whoever is your buyer can obviously cover the mortgage. So there is some research on the front end and it's outside of the structure um that needs to be done.
Absolutely, yeah. So if you have like a three-family house, there's houses that sometimes people walk into and they're like, I've had this house for 30 years, and the person that's living on the second floor has been leasing for 15, and they're paying like $900. Now the market rate is all of a sudden 1,400, right? So
That's exactly what happened to me.
yeah.
At a property Vinny closed on for me. The most of the, and I find that particularly in the Northeast, a lot of the older people, the boomers, they're retiring and they're taking their money and they're going south and
Mhm.
they haven't touched the property since they bought it. And it's, really, really, they didn't really care as much as a newer landlord because they had no mortgage maybe. And so
Yeah,
it's just somebody that's been there forever and pays the 900 and now the rent is 1650 and so you have a very difficult time. So that's something that you guys need to know. If that tenant is still on a lease or if they're month to month, what it's going to be like to transition
true.
as the new owner with that person or people in the property. I had this happen to me with a property that Benny closed on with me in Connecticut. It was very, very, very difficult to break the news. There's a human aspect, you don't want to, throw people out of their home that they've been in because a lot of these renters have been there 15 years and they've been there forever. So property owner sells. Now you've got a mortgage that's nothing like what the previous owner had because it's a new property and you've got a cash flow.
True.
So
And I
there's
mean,
ways to deal with that.
yeah, and I think, like, we also do commercial real estate. So I mean, if you're looking at a commercial tenant, you want somebody who has, if you're going to purchase a commercial property, you want somebody who has like a 10-year lease and they're going to stay for a while. But now with residential, when a lot of people are selling residential, they like to keep their tenants month to month, right? Because they're like, hey, if, it's hard to sell. I mean, if you had to sell your properties now, we
Mm,
have excellent leases, like they're all cash flowing well,
right.
right?
Right. And they're all guaranteed. Yeah.
All guaranteed. So now if
Hmm.
you're going to sell a home, that's, you have like somebody who's on the first floor and they're paying $900 a month and they have another two, year left on their lease, that you're going to be in a tough situation. You know what I mean? You can't go up on it or whatever. So a lot of people are selling their homes um with month to month. So what does month to month mean? Like you go in, you're purchasing a property, you're like, all right, it's cash flowing this much. Now, when I raise, these tenants are not going to stay, so I'm going to have to find new tenants. So it's our job, to look at what's the market rate, what can I get people in here for, how much is it going to cost for you to rehab this property to get the amount? Because going back to the person who's been leasing for 15 years, they haven't touched the property at all, right? So you got to do
Absolutely.
new hardwood. You have to, put some capital into it. So then you also want to know, like, all right, I'm cool spending $5,000 to $6,000 to rehab this unit, but how long is it going to stay vacant for? So that's when we go back and we look at the market and say, hey, Natasha, like the market is, about 20 days for this to,
Right.
you know?
Yes, so it's very important that we look at the current tenants if you do, because a lot of them do have tenants in, and it could be cash flowing for the current owner, but not for you,
True.
for a while.
Mhm.
Because again, you have to look at displacing a tenant. And Vinny, do you have a legal team?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah. And I know Vinny has offered, he works, a good property manager offers to work with the current tenants and get them into a place that is affordable for them within their budget. And just not to displace a tenant. I've been there. It's not fun.
Mm.
Um, I've had to, a lot of you have been following me, I've had to evict someone who just wasn't paying rent for it, and it went on for a year.
Mm,
So, and they were there forever paying significantly below market rate. And I gave them a really long time to adjust because understand you're uprooting somebody's life by changing their finances drastically because they're collateral damage, right? They're not the buyer, they're not the seller, they're just gonna take the hit as a result of a transaction that has nothing to do with them.
yeah,
So, but is going to ultimately affect them. So
yeah,
it's very, very difficult. So yes, it's good to look at what you're getting. For all of my landlords out there, this is why it's important that you keep up with market rate. I know um, we have people in there forever and it's fine. But when you want to sell, a lot of times, if you have tenant in there on a lease, a new landlord with a new mortgage, because you want to make money, right? You want to make money on
mhm,
selling your property. That person, that buyer has to take on that mortgage, and that mortgage has to be covered by the rents. So
yes,
that's why it's important that you as a landlord don't ignore keeping up with rents because now your buyers are significantly limited, right?
mhm,
Because they're like, well, I don't want to fight with three units trying to, raise the rent because you didn't raise it in 20 years,
right,
because it's, your family or your sister-in-law. And a lot of times it is very close relation to the owner. And the owner's like, well, I'm selling. And once it's
yeah.
out of their hair, that's out of their hair.
And I hope you know what it is too. Like you just touched on something where I think like if you're a landlord, like a common courtesy is, I believe, like if you're listing the property, you want to obviously get like a knowledgeable agent or broker who's going to say like, hey, if we list for this amount, we're going to sell it. So you know that the property is eventually going to sell. So
Mhm.
at that time, it's okay to go to your tenants and say like, hey, listen, property's going on the market. The agent that I have is excellent, or the broker that I have is excellent. They're going to help you find another place for the amount that you're paying. I don't know if, or, I could also express your interest to stay to the new owner. And I think those transactions become a lot easier that way. A lot of landlords want to put their house in the market and not tell their tenants, which I think is a no-no because then that's where like the displacement and the
And it's happened.
happen.
It's happened. It's happened to me where, the property that we work with a lot, the owner, it was his family and
Mhm.
his, on one unit and his employee on the first floor and, a friend of a friend on the third floor. So it was very, very difficult and there was no notification. So it was kind of like when the house went on the market, that's when they found out. So
Yeah.
yeah, you should give your tenants some notice. And again, keep up with market rate because nobody wants to hear, hey, by the way, I know that you're only paying 900, but really it's like 1750 for this unit.
Yeah.
That's going to be very difficult for somebody to come up with, and in the time it takes to sell and actually make the exchange, right? To sell the property and to close. So just make it easier on everybody and keep your market rate because again, you're going to limit your buyer. No buyer is going to want to walk into a headache.
No. And they're not going to want to walk into something that's not generating cash flow. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, and that's a deal breaker, right? And for those of you who know me, know I'm all about tax flow as well as cash flow. And sometimes the tax flow kind of offsets the limiting cash flow in the beginning. So
Mhm.
that's why sometimes it's good to be gracious. And I let my tenant stay there for 6 months under the current rent, which was significantly below market rate because one, I don't want to displace them. It was unfair; they weren't notified, and two, I tax flowed significantly on the back end, and I talk about bonus depreciation as a real estate professional and real estate professional status in the IRS code. So that's one of the very good benefits of being a landlord, right? And offsetting a lot of your income. So sometimes you get the benefit on the back end, so you can give a little grace on the front end. You
Yeah.
want to be ethical landlord, right? You don't want to be, you
Well,
know what.
it's like, yeah, it's like anything else. Like the building here, like if you're at anywhere, like even if you're ever taking over a property,
Mhm,
it's such like a I mean, such like a disconnect, right? But like if
mhm.
you're taking over a property and everybody's happy, I just want to keep on, like I'm investing my money. I want you guys to be
Right,
happy. What's going on? What's not going on? What do you need me to fix? What don't you need me to fix? If you're happy, like happy wife, happy life, they say,
right. So what's an absolute deal breaker for an investment property? So if you're walking through a property with me, right, because you're my right-hand man,
Hmm.
what is something or some things that you'll go, yeah, it's not worth it. Right, because a lot of times people think, your agent just wants to close, right? And that's not true. They're supposed to have your best interest at heart because that's your repeat business, right? That is your client. So, you don't want to sell a lemon, so to speak, right? So what are some things where you're like, yeah, this is not worth it?
I think, I mean, I truly think like the appearance. I think the house speaks to all of us, right? When you
Hmm.
walk through a house, if you're walking through a house and you see like plastic on the windows, what does that tell you, right? There's a draft. There's a draft, and there's been a draft there for a while. So the tenant is okay putting a piece of plastic on the window because they know that there's a draft coming in, which means the landlord does not care about the property, right?
Hmm.
Personally, that's the way I see it.
That's a
Or
good, that's a good red flag.
100%. Like you
Yeah.
see like a broken step on the main stairway going in. The landlord does not care about the property. So that means that because they're just like, all right, whatever, money's cash flowing, it's coming in or whatever. So now you already know that you have tenants who are kind of like, it's cold in here, I'm pissed off. They're already like, you're going to
Hmm.
rent the property. Now they're going to start asking you to fix that stuff, right?
Yep. Yep.
And now you already know that the landlord is not taking care of this house. So you're buying a headache. Now, unless you're getting it at like a substantial discount, I would say like let's walk away from this, you know?
Right, right. And you're willing to put the money in to fix it. And that's also an indicator of the other issues that you may not know about once
Mhm.
the property's in your hand. And I can attest to you never know.
Yeah.
It's like once you hit the closing table, the doors open and all of a sudden it's like, oh, you're electrical or you're plumbing. And it's like, are you serious?
Yeah. Well, that's what I tell people. Like when you take over a property and they say like, "Oh, my roof is leaking," and you're like, "Okay, was it leaking last year when the other landlord owned the house?" Yes.
Hmm.
Okay, so it's something that we know about, but I'm gonna take care of it. You know what I mean?
Right,
So
right, right.
that's like something that you could like just be a nice person. I mean, I think it goes a long way with everything.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Take the people, the tenants that are in there are essentially paying your mortgage and helping your investment. So the better you take care of them, the better it's going to be
Yeah,
for you.
I always say your inventory, is not your property, it's your tenants. Because
Mhm.
houses don't pay for themselves, right?
Yeah.
So we take care of the tenants. Vinny is my property manager. He handles three properties. What is it? Three, four, five, six, seven doors he handles for me
Yes.
in Connecticut because we I love Connecticut to invest in, although I know you guys got all the snow.
Cold today. Cold.
All the colds.
Cold.
And
Yeah.
so tell me, and a lot of people ask me, like, how do you handle, because I'm not in the state, I left, right? How do you handle out of state investment? I go, well, a property manager, right? Invest in a property manager. You can't do everything yourself,
Mm.
right? And I am a real estate professional via IRS standards, but I still have a property manager because I'm not there, right?
Yeah.
I can be the first responder, but ultimately I've got to pass the ball, right?
Mhm.
To Vinny so he can drive it to the hoop, right? He's got to handle it. So um tell me why somebody should get a property manager or when should they get a property manager?
I think, I mean, anything over, I recommend it to people who have like a three family because honestly, you're taking yourself out of this situation, right? You're taking like, I'm reading a book now that it's called Traction, but there's a saying in it that I love. It's called delegate and elevate, right? You just said
Oh,
you cannot handle everything on your own. So, I mean, if you're sitting there and, like let's just say you're flying out somewhere, you're about to get on a flight and somebody calls you and they're like, hey, this is leaking. I need a plumber right away. Now, what are you going to do? Miss your flight? You're
right,
not have service in a second. Like you're not getting that phone call. So it's better to
right,
land. And I'm like, hey, Natasha, how was your flight? Just to let you know, we had a leak and it got taken care of. We're good to go. Like you need
right.
somebody to handle the situation when it's something that you can't get to. So
Right,
I
right. If you
believe
don't have a
that's
Rolodex of professionals on your own, and it is also great to separate, right? Like Vinny, they can call Vinny directly. A lot of times they copy me just because they know that I'm the owner. But they know Vinny is the guy that's going to reach out to the appropriate contractor and get them over there and schedule when they're available and how to get in and when things are available. Right now, Vinny is fixing a mold situation for me. They
Mhm.
had to like cut the wall out and then now they put it back and they moved them, they did the mold remediation. And now he's got to deal with the paint samples. So
Yeah, big pizza.
these are things that I don't want to deal with.
And it's hard to deal with. I mean, I don't know if you've tried picking up the phone to call anybody to get something done, but by the time you press 1, 0, hold on for 45 minutes, it's crazy. So for you to be, in Atlanta and having to try to find out a paint sample, it's a little difficult. For
Yep.
me being here and having these guys to call, and it's nice to have. So I mean, we even have the website set up where all the tenants have an email, got an email from my office, and they could just go on and enter in their trouble ticket, and we'll get back to them in 24 hours. I mean,
See?
they're comfortable enough to text me and call me, and I don't care because I'd like to be that person for them to go to, you know?
And just so you guys know, I know a lot of, and I went through this as a property manager, as an investor. Um, the amount of calls you can get just can give you anxiety.
Mhm.
The amount of just it could be anything small from like, oh, my neighbor upstairs smoking, or the kids are stomping and it's keeping my elderly mother awake, or you know, the pipes burst, or whatever have you. When you get all of these calls compiled together because you start to build your portfolio, it can be nerve-wracking, right? And it could just make you it's shut down, right? You
Yeah.
can shut down. So it is good to have a property manager, somebody who has a Rolodex where you could just make the phone call. It is worth the investment. It is tax deductible. It is a lifesaver. Vinny takes a lot off my plate.
Yeah, and
He
I
takes a lot off my plate to
and
the
you
point
know
I'm like, okay, fine, whatever. I just choose the cheapest person and let's get it done. If it's, something small. So
yeah.
he kind of buffers the the 4 or 5 phone calls that I would normally get.
Mhm.
Right. So a lot of times it's worth it. So what should somebody, a new investor, look for in a property manager?
I think you want to find somebody that one has the ability to and I think like the best thing would be like, sitting down with them and being like, call your plumber right now, see if they pick up, or call your electrician on speaker, see if they pick up. You want to make sure that you have somebody who has trusted professionals that will get something done right away. Like we had a call this morning on one of the properties, and you have like a Navian boiler at one of the properties, which is a
Mhm.
very like particular, you can't just call any plumber, right? So
Oh,
that
okay.
yeah, that call came in. That plumber's getting over there. He's got to jump online because it's all like a computer furnace. So he's got to get there and get online with Navient to figure out what's going on with everything. So that's being done as we speak. But that's something that call came in like this morning. So I called him.
Hmm.
He's like, I'm tied up all day, but by the end of the day, I'll get there because we got single digits going on tomorrow. So he's got to make sure that he takes care of this. So
Hmm.
to me, like you want somebody who has the connections to get that done. Now, apart from that, the building that we're in here, like we have 60 tenants that we take care of in this building. So we have somebody downstairs who again doesn't have heat. We have another person who's over there taking care of that. So you have to have the ability to have these
That's like the worst phone call ever in the
well,
Northeast. It's like when you don't have heat.
or a toilet, like, hey, the
Or you,
toilet,
yeah, the toilet won't flush. Oh, it's the winter time is like when I cringe, like my hairs on my neck go up because somebody is gonna lose heat.
yeah.
Somebody is going
Mhm.
to have heat problems,
Yeah.
right?
And I have these conversations like meetings with like the same way I have meetings with the agents. Like you have to make sure that everything is good to go. You have to make sure that hey, listen, I might need you. Or even during the winter time, you go through everybody. You go through your 3 plumbers and you tell them like, hey, just make sure that you're around when I call, even if you can't get to it. I tell them that too. That's another thing. And if the answer is I don't know, let me hear I don't know.
Right.
And
Tell the truth.
tell the truth and that's it. And if you can't do it, don't tell me you could. That's the only thing I ask for. You know what I mean? If you say I'm going to be there by 5, be there by 5. And if you're not, let them know, which I was late today. So, right.
Vinny was late today, but that's okay.
Yeah.
It's
But
okay.
like,
Vinny was
but
handling my issue, so it's
yeah.
okay.
So you have to have the team. I always said like when I used to have my DJ business, I always said, man, I wish I could split myself in two. Like
Right.
somebody could go do 3 parties and I could do 3 parties. But when you're doing this stuff like with the real estate or property management, you got to
Mhm.
have a team that's going to go when you call them.
And a
So
backup team. So you just can't have like one plumber. You, like
uh,
Vinny said, you got to have like three on
yeah,
deck. And
because I
also,
have my guy that takes care of everything, Danny. He's awesome. He's the one that always, Danny and Mike Leege. But this is a totally different system that these guys don't work on. So he called the guy and he's
mhm,
like, I got somebody for you. Don't worry about it. I'm gonna have him go check it out. So you know what I mean? Like now
right,
these guys are kind of like helping me because they know that like I give them, business and stuff. I'll tell
right.
you a funny story quick. I don't know if hopefully the kid
Go
watches it.
for it.
Yeah, I'm getting I was at my house. I have a landscaper that does my house, and he kind of did it for me in a bind. because the original guy wasn't there. So I had one of the gentlemen that does one of your properties. I said, hey,
Mhm.
just go to my house and cut the grass quick. Well, we live by the water, so we have like a high water table. So he was like driving around, and I think his machine got like stuck. So my daughter's home. She's getting out of the shower. She's upstairs, and she has the window open, and she hears all this commotion outside. So she calls me, and she's like, Vinny, there's like four guys trying to get the machine out, and they're all swearing. They're like, this is the guy that gives us all the business. We're dead. We're I'm like, oh my God. I thought it was so funny. So I called him. I'm like, bro, it's okay. Like it happens. Don't worry
Right,
about
right,
it. My wife might kill you, but I'm not gonna care, you know?
right. Relationships are
Yeah,
important with your contractors, and they have to have a respect, right? Because otherwise, your jobs don't get done.
100%. And I tell
Right,
them too, like, especially now with the snow, I say, if I get it, plows break, trucks break, things go wrong, people call in or whatever. I said, just please just do me the respect of sending me a text message, so I could get in front of the problem. Because if I call you and I say, hey, I'm the gentleman that's coming to plow is on his way. Unfortunately, he had a problem. He's going to be a little bit late. It's better than you calling me and saying, where are the guys that are doing my driveway type deal.
right, right. And then for those of you who don't know, in the Northeast, when there's snow, it's super important that you salt and plow,
Mhm.
because it can affect you as a landlord and create a huge liability. Because you don't want someone slipping and falling on ice or can't get out of the driveway to go to work. You've got to be on it. So those snowplow guys are out there early before people back out to go to work. So you do have to have some way, and a lot of new investors think they can do it all on their own. I promise you, like Benny says, once you get to a three family, you need someone to delegate so you can relax in
So
your
you could have a peace.
landlordism.
Yeah, you could have a peace of mind, like you
Right.
could say to yourself, like, all right, this is taken care of. I'm going to be okay, and that's it. I think that's
So tell me, what's the average cost of a property manager for, like, say, a three family?
so. They usually do like the amount of the rents that come in, like an 8 to 12%
Okay.
ratio, of like of what comes in. So I mean, it's well worth it,
Yeah.
truthfully and
If
honestly.
I can attest to it, it's well worth it. I mean, because again, when you have a three family, it's something about anything over a two family. When you have a three family, something is always up,
Hmm.
right? Something is always up. So property manager is super important. And when you're out of state, if you guys want to contact Vinny, I'm going to drop his information below in the description box on YouTube and in my caption on Instagram. If you guys are in the Northeast area, I'm going to drop his IG so that you guys can check him out. Connecticut is still cash flowing to my knowledge.
It is.
Right, it is. It's still. I mean, some of my best investments are in the Northeast in Connecticut because there's a lot of three families and um, new financing rules. Right? I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not. I've been out of the loop with the new financing rules,
Yeah,
but
there's like new FHA guidelines where, like a first time home could be a multifamily. I mean, now they're
Mhm.
looking into, you could even purchase a home, like if they'll take a look at getting you pre-qualified if the unit is already like generating cash flow,
So
which
this
is
is
good.
outside of FHA.
Yeah, yeah, there's so
Oh,
many different guidelines which are awesome. And then we have another thing, like as far as that, we have the teams that you could put together, as far as lenders and brokers that could get you creative financing for these properties. So
okay.
great time to invest. I have my
Yeah.
niece now, her and her boyfriend actually just went to go look at a duplex in Southington, like
Yeah.
they're all about the passive income and they want to, and they're starting young. I wish I started. My father hears me now talking about it.
Right.
Yes,
I wish I would, if I'd have known, if I would have known, I would have ditched
yeah.
that condo that I
So
had and
same
went
thing
for
with
a
like,
multifamily.
yeah,
Yeah.
same thing. I tell like my daughter, she wanted to, she's renting right now because she's going to Sacred Heart University. So she's like, oh, I gotta go. I want to save some money. I want to buy a car. I'm like, take that money and buy the house that you're living in and rent it out to your roommates. You know what I mean? You're going to be going to school for 4 years. You could own that house. So I'm like,
Right.
just talking.
Right.
My mom
See,
hears me. She's
guys,
like, what?
see?
My mom hears me and she's like, what did you just say to her? Like, you remember what you did when you were 20? I'm like, I know.
I remember. See, if only we would have, started saving for a house when we were born.
Hmm.
Right. But Anyways, guys, if you want to get in touch, I will have his information. He is my right-hand man for my properties. I hope this was resourceful for you and informational for you. So thank you, Vinny, so much, owner of Advise Realty Services, my broker and property manager, my all-in-one stop shop. All right. So I'll see you guys later. And if you want to get information on the tax strategies mastermind and how I utilize my multifamilies to offset my housing costs and my tax liability, go ahead and join my free live training. The link is in the bio and I'll drop it in the description box if you catch me on YouTube.